called there, I think it was Boxing Day originally. Somebody had noticed a swan there with a lump in its neck. Often lumps are just food going down and nothing to worry about, or sometimes it's even a ball of grass that gets stuck in the back of the throat, so initially we were hoping it was just that. We went down there, but it was obvious from the start that it was quite a large lump, and it was sort of 2/3 of the way down its throat, its neck, which is unusual. There was another swan on the pond as well, which didn't help. Hailsham doesn't regularly have swans there, and it's not an ideal pond for swans, but this swan was being pushed away from us by the other swan, which was obviously more territorial and was probably older, whereas this was quite a young swan. So it was impossible to actually catch the swan on that occasion. And we did actually come back the very next day after catching another swan down at Newhaven Marina, and we thought we'd give this one a go, so came down with some bread. Luckily, he was on his own again by the far side of the pond, with ice between him and the other swan. And the swan was actually quite a distance away, probably 2/3 of the way across the pond with ice between us. But bless him, he was obviously hungry or decided he wanted help, and gradually made his way out across the ice and walked all the way across the ice to Trev. We always try and catch swans using bread if we can to start with, because obviously it's less stressful for them. Often they're used to being fed at the ponds by people, so it's a natural thing for them to do. A lot of the time it works, sometimes it doesn't, and then we have to resort to using a swan hook, which at the end of the day it is more stressful, but it's done nice and quickly, and it just enables us to get that around the back of the swan's neck and then pull the swan in towards us. But we'll always try the bread technique first. A lot of swans, if they've been caught by a swan hook, they then recognise it. Next time you try, know what you're up to. We did have a few problems there. The resident Canada geese decided to come along for a feed as well, and things like that can distract the swan. The same as if you're trying to catch ducks and swans appear, it can put them off and it can intimidate them, and then they can go away. And Canada geese are quite sort of intrusive. They're quite sort of burly and sort of come and get what they want and push everybody else out. But Trevor was able to sort of feed those to one side and carry on feeding the swan. And we got him out, and it was obvious that there was quite a large lump there. There was no visible injury on the outside. And you could feel the swelling on the inside, and we were pretty certain it was probably an abscess in there. So we contacted the Swan Sanctuary and made sure that they were able to take him on, because it was obviously something that it was either possibly going to need an operation, or certainly would need to be in for quite a long period of time on antibiotics to get over. And they've got X-ray facilities up there in Shepperton where their sanctuary is, which we don't have here yet. So we can cope with swans for a few days, a week, but if it's going to be a long term, then it's a nicer environment for them to go up to Shepperton with the other swans up there as well. So we tend to send them up to Dawson Steve at the Swan Sanctuary. But yeah, they happily agreed to take him on, and they contacted us about 2 weeks later to say, I think it was two or 3 weeks, to say he was fully fit and recovered. It was an abscess caused by a fish hook that had got, he'd obviously swallowed some line or something and had caused problems inside his neck, and it had fully cleared up. And he was actually released down at Prince's Park in the end. The other swan had actually left Hailsham by the time this one was ready to be released, and as we try not to encourage the swans down to Hailsham because it's not ideal. So Prince's Park is the only non-territorial flock of swans that we have, where a lot of the youngsters will go when they leave the parents, and also a lot of the old swans that are no longer breeding will go to Prince's Park, so it's a natural environment for swans to sort of go to.
We received a call from the manager at Pets at Home that a pigeon was stuck in the netting above home base at the back. Went down, saw the height, that this pigeon was stuck at and thought there's no way I'm going up a ladder to try and get that one out. Spoke to Trevor, who said, you know, give the fire brigade a call. They'll be more than happy to come out as long as they're not attending something else. We never actually got the pigeon because when they cut it free, it released itself and decided to fly off out of the fireman's hands, and so they came back down with an empty box. But obviously the best result, the pigeon was uninjured, unhurt, and was back where it should be.
Were the firemen quite good about the rescue?
Firemen were absolutely fantastic. Really, really nice bunch. Lots of banter, lots of comments as you'd expect, but very compassionate. At no point was it's just a pigeon. But again, they use them as training exercises. So they take the opportunity of working with equipment they may not necessarily get to work with every day. So it's a good training opportunity for them.
We had a rather disturbing call from a chap in Rushlake Green, which is between Helsham and Heathfield. It was a Monday morning that we had the call, and unfortunately he'd found a rather large female fallow deer in his field, and it had been caught up in stock fencing the previous day on the Sunday. A local vet had been out to deal with the deer, but unfortunately after cutting it free they'd just given it pain relief and antibiotics and then left it in the field. The vet had said if it was still there the following day to ring up the vets and they'll see what they can do. The following day the owner of the land decided to call us, luckily, and we were able to rush out there with a team of rescuers and a couple of vehicles in order to try and quickly get this deer saved. It was quite heartbreaking, to be honest, getting there and seeing this deer that had been in the field all night, and clearly post-capture myopathy had set in, and that can be fatal in deer. You know, once that sets in, it's a slippery slope downwards. So we thought, right, we've got to get this animal treated and we need to get it up to St Tiggy's as quick as possible, which is exactly what we did. It was difficult to get the animal out of the location because of how muddy the area was, which is typical for that time of year. But we managed to get it up to St Tiggy's pretty quickly, within sort of 2.5 hours of the animal getting onto the stretcher and being loaded into our van. It was at St Tiggy's, which is pretty good going. Luckily the motorways were nice and clear, and we got him there. Sadly, despite St Tiggy Winkles working on her for over 5 days, they weren't able to reverse the post-capture myopathy, and the poor thing unfortunately died, which is really sad. I think if we'd have got the call sooner to say that that deer was caught in the fencing, and if we'd acted on the Sunday, that deer probably could have been saved.
Yeah, we had a rescue at Framfield, which is just outside Uckfield. We'd had a call from people who had, while walking their dog, had found a deer collapsed in a ditch. We always tend to assume it's probably a deer that's been caught in fencing and somebody's cut free, but it's just something we don't recommend. We'd much rather turn up while the deer's still caught, because obviously once it's been cut free, people think it's just going to run off and be fine, but more often than not it will run off and collapse. And then of course we arrive and are trying to find a deer that's now mobile or collapsed, you know, in the middle of nowhere, which makes life a lot more difficult. Deer that are caught in fencing have more often than not will develop severe ligature injuries from where the wire's been wrapped around their leg. Even if you can't physically see a wound, there's going to be a wound develop because of the pressure, because it will obstruct the blood supply to the bottom of the leg. So although people think they're doing the right thing by freeing them, the best thing is to leave them where they are, because they're not going anywhere. The leg's raised, so any blood flow is reduced, and if you back off, the deer's not stressed and it will lay there calmly. But this deer, we finally managed to find. She'd actually moved a little way down the ditch and pulled herself down there. About a maybe 15-minute walk, 20-minute walk to find her across about 5 stiles, 4 electric fences, 3 footpaths, 2 muddy fields. It was quite a trek over there, and of course we then had the concept of having to walk back with the deer as well. What became clear once we got down there was that there was quite deep mud down there at the bottom of the stream, and so as she tried to get up and run away, she couldn't get a grip on the mud, which was handy for us. But initially it made it look like her back end wasn't working at all, because she was just trying to get up with her front legs. I quickly jumped on the back of her to restrain her and quickly pulled her head up out of the water, because obviously she's at an angle and initially her head drops down into the water. We cover their head straight away with a pillowcase or a blanket we got with them, because that cuts down any stress, because if they can't see what's going on around them, it reduces their stress levels very quickly. You notice straight away if you lift the cover off their eyes, they straight away will be trying to sort of get away, but cover them up and they calm down. It was clear she was probably one of this year's young deer, born in the summer. She was quite small, which again made it quite difficult restraining her for me, because I'm on the back of her. We try not to put our body weight on her, but obviously it's important that they feel the pressure so they don't think they can get away. She was at an angle, and she's quite a small deer, and we're worried about pelvis injuries, so I can't put weight on her back end. I can't put weight on her front end, or she's going to tip down into the stream, and possibly, with her nostrils underwater. And Trevor came down and joined me with Sue, and they were able to treat one of her legs, clean the wound out, bandage that up at this, down on the scene. Then we had the job of trying to get her onto a stretcher down a slope like that. As I say, again with the slope down into the water, so we had to sort of lay the stretcher over the water and just pull her forwards onto it. And got her up on the stretcher, back onto level land, and then we realised she actually had quite a nasty wound on the other back leg as well. But the good thing was she was using both legs, and once we tucked them under her, the pelvis looked absolutely fine. So it looked like she'd ripped the inside of the other leg as she was struggling on the barbed wire before she was cut free. So that leg was then bandaged. She'd been given pain relief, antibiotics, made comfortable. And then we had the process of carrying her back across these muddy fields, stiles, electric fences, doing it all in reverse. And she was then put in the back of the ambulance and taken out to Tiggywinkles, where they're now looking after her. As far as we know, she's doing well, bless her. But luckily, our worst fears were that there was either a spinal problem or her hips or a pelvis. But she's like, it seems like it was purely the way she was lying in the mud made it look like that, and it was the injuries from the fencing on her legs.
Unfortunately, at the moment, St Tiggywinkles are finding themselves in a very difficult situation where they have so many casualties in care, and also have recently had quite a number of animals dumped on them by rescue centres closing down or taking in too many animals, that they now haven't got any space to take on deer from us anymore. So we're in the process of trying to find facilities down here in Sussex where we can actually look at rehabilitating the deer, treating the deer, potentially giving them surgery, and then getting them back out to the wild. But that's easier said than done. It's not a cheap thing to do, not by any means, and obviously we'll need to find vets that have got experience in doing the type of work that we need. So if there's anyone out there that has sort of secluded paddocks that are away from main roads, nice and out in the countryside, or a place where we could perhaps put up a couple of sheds which we can use to hold deer and potentially then eventually release them from, and you've got deer naturally in that area, then you could well be able to help us out.